So let's talk about variety within your workouts and when that's good. And then at what point could it be expensive to put that in there and so not so
detrimental.
Yeah, not so productive. Because I don't know about you, I love finding variety. Like I do get bored, but I also recognize the value of consistency in terms of advancement and understanding what type of variety I might need to add in order to continue my path or my journey in the direction I'm trying to take it. But oftentimes I see like variety ends up being super random and people are just kind of throwing stuff in there because they think it's helping them. Program hopping is one of them. And that's probably because they can't stay consistent. So there's program hopping, which is a whole other thing.
Yeah, so I think what we're doing is we got two words. We got consistency. We got variety. We talked about this before the podcast because I was confused by the word variety because I think variety is important. But I also think, like we talked about, we're discussing at what point does variety be like, you've reached the limit of it. And I think that's what we're talking about today. So like, I'll start with me. So I program for TAC games and I get a lot of people. I understand that I'm playing a game. Anytime you program with anybody, whether it's one person or hundreds of people, you're playing a game where we all understand that consistency is important. I would love to put you on the most boring program and you probably have the best benefit
That's
from
what they need.
That's what you need.
Right. But that's not what they want.
But that's not what you want. Right. So you're playing this, what did we say earlier? The crazy hot girl scale of like, yeah, exactly. So
the crazy hot matrix.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to play a game where I want you to see a huge value from what I'm providing you. But I also don't want you to be like, oh man, we always back squat every Monday, Friday, and I'm so bored because the percents are barely going up. I just want to hit a 1 rep max, or I want to go do something different. I want to do this. And I'm playing a game of I want to keep them on the program and not churn them. And I want them to see a value of consistency, but I also had a little bit of variety into it to make sure it's like the shiny thing, you know?
Yeah, no, you hit a really good point there just in terms of your consumer and what you need, what they need versus what they want. And it is a balance of that. And some people out there would say like, no, man, fuck that. Like it isn't what, give them exactly what they need and they can get over it. Okay, well, that's fine. That might work for a very small part of a population, but that is not the majority of the population. Ask me how I know, right? And whether that's in a very specific population or subset of people like law enforcement officers or the military, or you're going a little bit more broad, right, into the commercial, sector or whatever, and you're just talking about somebody who wants to look and feel better, or an athlete or an amateur athlete versus a professional athlete. Even professional athletes are going to push back, right, at some level. I mean, so the point of that is like there has to be a balance. And so giving them that variety is important, but at the same time, you cannot overemphasize the importance of consistency when it comes to building foundations and fundamentals. And ultimately, I don't think most people that know will argue those are the two most important things that you need to be practicing all the time. It's the foundations and the fundamentals of what it is that makes the thing happen in the first place. Yeah. We were having this off topic or off on the side conversation about this trainer coach that's out there, and he's kind of notorious, I would say. His name's Joel Seedman.
Yeah, Seed meme. Most of the strength.
He shows up a lot because people are just bashing what they're seeing him doing with his athletes. You want to talk on that for a second?
Yeah, so he works primarily, at least from what is shown on Instagram, with high-level NFL athletes or professional athletes in the sports world. And a lot of his stuff is creating instability or stability in unstable environments and using different methods and grips and all kinds of variety in their training to create some sort of stimulus. It looks super weird. Some of it is super weird.
I'd say it's pretty unorthodox in a lot of ways.
Very unorthodox. He's got his doctorate in physical therapy. So, I mean, he has the knowledge. And so I'm assuming he understands why he's doing it. It's the explaining part that is kind of getting misconstrued. I'm not saying I'm a fan of his by any means, but it works for who he's working with.
I hear what you're saying.
I'll play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
So, and we'll probably hopefully bring it back to IEP of like, because I don't even know who we're even talking about. You, I guess, had to show me on Instagram before we got on it, right? So I'm out of it. But like, that's all I see. So are you basing your thoughts upon what he does based upon just Instagram? Or do you know this is what his program looks like? Is like, because what you're getting to is it's too much variety, right? It's not a whole lot of consistency. So are we basing upon just what you see, or do we know that there maybe is consistency behind it? Because like hypothetically, I could get on the IEP program and I actually can't because we don't have stuff like that. But like if I picked a bunch of random movements and posted, it could be like, well, this is just a black box training.
Right.
But in actuality, if you actually jumped into it, you'd be like, wow, this is really consistent with a little bit of variety.
Yeah. And so I'm going off of what is on Instagram, which is what most people do.
Yeah. That's
so I'm looking at this and like, hey, let's explain maybe what the process you should be going through when you're validating or looking through these kind of posts. Is this right for me? Is this not right for me? I don't like how he doesn't explain things at least he goes into very scientific depth with his captions. It's a lot to read and most people don't like to read.
Yep. We know that.
And a lot of people are just going to watch. And so they're going to see this high level running back. Chris Carson was on there for a little bit and he was beating him in the head with a foam roller.
While he was on a Bosu.
While he was on a Bosu or
doing
something.
a back squat or something.
And I mean, it's stuff like that.
Exactly,
and so people.
So now you know.
It's a little, okay. I thought when it was like basic variety.
No, it's not it's not like a single like glute bridge, single arm contralateral dumbbell press on a Swiss ball or anything.
You never know what people would pay you for, Aaron. Maybe if you offered that on IEP, you might get someone to sign up for it.
So that's the thing. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, so a lot of people just look and see, hey, this has got a lot of views. This high level dude who plays at a high level is doing this. Maybe that's what I should do to get the edge. Instead of let's step back, see where you're at, do our assessment test, figure out what you need to build. And then once you get those fundamentals built and you have a good base, then add in some variety to keep you stimulated and training over a long period of time.
Okay, so I'll make this question. I'll pose this to you. So let's say we're not on a Bosu ball smacking someone with the foam roller. So pick something maybe that we would have in our program. Let's say it was you. So you step into this person's shoes and you're showcasing a movement that is pretty varietous. I just made that word up. Whatever the kick you want to call it. How would you, as Aaron, pose that and tell people, hey, you know what? This is pretty crazy, but this is why we're doing it. And remember behind this, like, how would you pose that to make it look better for his company? Or if you were in our shoes for IEP and there was doing something of similar nature, but not that extreme?
I go back to constantly have to show them and tell them about the fundamentals. You're doing this to build this for this reason. And then occasionally add this in. Could be every other week to create some variety. It could be, here's an exercise that is going to give you a little bit of an edge in this particular movement. But it's not about just randomly throwing stuff together that's sexy.
Yeah, I think that the way I'd answer that question is the guy's doing that on purpose. Like it's getting views.
Bad marketing is good marketing.
Clickbait for sure.
He works with NFL athletes primarily, so you're seeing it's whatever he's doing is working for him. He's doing it for a reason. Again, like there's been several of these types of people out there before. We're either going, this dude's either a total idiot or he's a genius, right? And then not in a genius from like necessarily the exercise programming perspective, but it's genius in sense of the marketing perspective.
Yeah.
And so you said something there was like, where do most people go? I fought this for so long, Aaron. I said, people are not going to go to Instagram. They're smarter than this. They're not going to go to Instagram for all their information. They're not going to go to YouTube for all their information. Man, obviously I was wrong. And that's been proven. And again, it's not a bad thing. At first I thought it was, but then I I had to get on board. This is how people consume and learn. And I've learned a ton from Instagram and from YouTube. So I can't take away from that. But my point of that being is what are they seeing? And then how are they putting it or matching up the dots? And to your point, like, I think when you look at some of this stuff out there and you're looking at, oh, that's cool variety. That's a cool drill that IEP just showed. It makes kind of good logical sense that if I did do stuff like that, I would be a better shooter. But I think, like in IEP's case, in our programming, we're trying to give you the rationale, the underlying stuff that's going on in that, what you're seeing us do or what you're hearing us say. And so, yes, this is a little bit of, and I heard some other guys say this on another show that I did, but it's a little bit of crowd work, and just trying to kind of get people to notice who you are and understand what it is that you're trying to provide and compel them to want to learn more about it, right? And if that is basically what Instagram is, it's crowd work. And whatever your product, whatever your service offering, whatever your show or whatever is just trying to pull people in a little bit. And I think the way to compel them to want to learn more is to provide them good information. And that's very hard in that format, going back to the caption. And, anything this guy writes is going to get it a fraction of the attention of the guy on the Bosu doing the back squat, getting smacked in the face with the, I don't think it was it a foam roller, or was it water to or a foam tube?
It was something.
Yeah, whatever it was. The point of that being is like so much gets lost in translation. So I think like when people are looking for like, well, would this type of variety that I'm seeing here in terms of how to train, what to train, whatever, how would this fit for me? Like, where are they leading me to? Like as a consumer, as the consumer, where are they leading me to? Where could I go next to find out more about this? And I think one of the challenges with this is that guy doesn't do a good job with that. But I also think he doesn't need to, because it's driving lead traffic to him somewhere. We don't see that. I don't know that. I just know that guy's really busy training a bunch of NFL athletes. So he doesn't need to give us any more information, as long as the word of mouth is pipelining the right way. And we shouldn't be making assumptions about how dumb or smart he is on any of it, right? And so it makes it tough for the consumer, going back to like understanding like, well, at what point is variety, does this putting this variety into my program not make sense anymore? And I know I want it, and I know there's some needs that I have, but at what point does it not make sense? And I think if you can't articulate why, then you shouldn't probably be doing it. You should probably, because if I asked you like, why is a squat important? Most people like that work out, like, why would a back squat be important for you? Well, like I said, it builds full body strength. You know, we're taxing the scene. They may be able to give me it at a different level, but they know. But if I said, why would it be important for you to stand up on a Bosu ball with a barbell on your back and even not get smacked in the face? Let's take that part out of it. Like, why in the hell would you be on a Bosu doing a barbell back squat? I don't think they could explain anything to me. Right. Just like they would say, oh, well, it's unstable, so that must be in it, and it looks really tough. And it is kind of tough to do. But yeah, it would be really tough to do that really, really well. But does that necessarily mean because it's tough, it's making you better, right, at the thing that you're doing? So it's that weird balance. But there's a couple key points there. One is how the information is delivered. But you said the other thing, which was shit, it slipped my mind.
I said something awesome, though.
No, it was pretty awesome. No, you said something up front. Sorry, you said something up front about it that resonated with me. But how people are getting that information and what makes the most sense to them. If they can't make sense of it, then whoever you're getting your information from should give you some pathway to go get that. And you mentioned it. We have an assessment to objectively evaluate kind of where you are. We have some guides. We have some things that people can get into to understand this stuff better. They can take a look at our programming through some samples that we have, that kind of stuff. Like, if you're not getting that, then you can't come up with that answer on your own, or you can't reach out to somebody to get it. You probably shouldn't be adding that variety in. I would go back to the consistency piece. Yeah.
So how do we approach? How do you feel we approach consistency versus variety and IEP at IEP, whether it be for us programming for teams, us programming for individuals, however that is?
So we train movement patterns. So we don't select exercises and
love that
lean into the niche of like, hey, we're going to be really good back squatters or power cleaners.
We do back squat. We do power clean.
We do them, but we create the variety by adding different variations of those lifts, because we're still training the movement of an explosive hinge, a squat pattern, whatever movement pattern we have those movements that we're working. And then we create the variety from different variations of those lifts.
So can you define some of the movement patterns for those of us that may anybody listening that doesn't understand?
Yeah.
Push, pull, like what does it look like?
Yeah, so one of them is a squat. Yeah. Everybody knows what squat is. We're going to stick with that. There's bilateral squat, so 2 legs. And then we have unilateral squat, which is a single leg.
Which we're talking about all day tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. We'll have like split squat is unilateral, Bulgarian split squat. Lunges are all variants. And then you have your variants of the bilateral squat, which could be box squat, front squat, back squat, low bar back squat. We'll talk on that. So again, it's based off the movement. We're still squatting. We're creating the variety of a different stimulus of, is this single leg? Is this 2 leg? Where is the bar placed in terms of leverage based off of that exercise selection? But the main thing is the movement's getting trained. And then we create the variety and stimulus from different types of exercises, still training that movement pattern.
So give me an example.
What do you mean?
Give me an example of the variety inside that movement pattern.
So let's go 4-week block.
Okay.
We'll do back squat, let's go speed and power program.
Absolutely. Okay, cool.
So we're going to do back squat on Monday or whatever day it is. And then the next week 2, we could do a split squat or a Bulgarian split squat. We'll do that. We're still training a squat pattern, but we're doing it on a single leg plane, we could do dumbbell or barbell, front rack. There's even branches off. You can go into that movement. Sure. And then we go back to the back squat. So you're getting repetition and consistency every other week. And then you create the variety of the next week, you're doing something a little different, still training the movement. Similar movement pattern. And then you go back to it. So you're getting the consistency by repeating it every other week, but you're not getting bored by doing it every single week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned like the patterns. You asked the very specific question, like, well, what do you mean by exercises versus movement patterns? Sure. There are going to be people listening to this right now and go, that's just semantics, guys. That's ridiculous. And my response to you, if you said that to me or commented that, I would say, well, when you're ready to graduate 3rd grade, let me know. Because movement patterns and exercises are different. Mm-hmm. We use exercises to express different things within movement patterns, right? Strength, power, speed, agility, balance, whatever it is. So getting people to wrap their head around the movements that are important for them and the reasons why. And then we can choose exercises to express the different things or train the different things we're trying to get out of that movement pattern. And so it's not about choosing exercises. There's a whole matrix of exercises, what you're talking about here. Mm-hmm. Like, man, there's so many things I could give you. You could have a barbell. How many ways can you do a barbell squat? Several. I mean, we could list off 5 to 10
tomorrow we're going to sit around and talk about all the different ways to do cleans.
Yeah, you're going to see us do it. Yeah, you're going to see us do it on YouTube and kind of cover this and simplify it so that you're not choosing or marrying yourself to an exercise. At the same time, understanding that the consistency that you grab or that you can get from doing that movement pattern through some specific exercises, and why sticking to a few of specific exercises gives you then a platform to be able to understand what's working, what isn't working, what are you actually getting out of it? Are you building strength or are you not? Are you building muscle or are you not? Are you building power or are you not? All those kind of things. That allows you to do that. If you're constantly jumping around all the time, it's hard to kind of nail anything down. But I think that's the thing I would caution people on. Like, if you're saying this is semantics, it's not, man. It's not semantics. Exercises and movement patterns are not the same thing, right? You have a movement pattern that we know we need to train, right? And that's what we are focused on, being better movers. Mm-hmm. How do you do that? Well, yes, we are going to use some exercises that have been labeled and kind of defined. That's a way to communicate it. And that's a way to easily apply those movements, like to the masses and across the board. The challenge that comes in is like when you start naming an exercise and giving it very specific definitions, that then it gets like, again, people get married to it, or they're indoctrinated into it. And that is the exercise, right? And that is what we do. It doesn't have to be like that. So, what you just walked through there is you're going to squat. Yeah. You're going to use a barbell. You're going to use some dumbbells, might be using some kettlebells in there sometime. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, but we had to pick some, right? And we picked them for very specific reasons.
I mean, we haven't even gotten to the load management, energy management aspect of why we create a little bit more variety too. Yeah. That's a whole other conversation.
There's so many things. So when we, again, going back to the YouTube stuff we're going to do and what we'll show, we can maybe touch on that a little bit, like why we like it, what to look out for. Again, what's easy to give somebody when they're not being coached versus somebody that is, to work around injuries or limitations or, equipment concerns or stuff like that.
I mean, that right there goes back to what we were talking about Seidman, of like, don't do that on your own. He's at least there coaching them and correcting them. And then a lot of ours is remote. So we pick exercises that you can do, or we know or have confidence in that you can do. If you can't, communicate with us. We can make scaling options. And then we know that you're not going to hurt yourself.
Yeah. So you had the question about what are the movement patterns and examples? And I would say, if we had to break them down really simply, again, foundationally, Aaron and I covered these before on another podcast.
You guys did another podcast.
We did a whole podcast, and it was a short one because it doesn't take a lot of talking through it. We don't have to overcomplicate this. But in short, it's the squat pattern / lunge pattern. You've got your hinge pattern. People think of that as the deadlift, right? You have a horizontal push, horizontal pull, vertical push, vertical pull. And you'll hear Aaron and I talk a little bit when we talk about programming about a few other things in there that are kind of auxiliary to that, like rotation, extension, flexion type exercises, more isolated. Example would be like a med ball throw, would be like a rotational movement. There's a lot of things going into that. But then like a flexion extension movement would be like a Nordic, like a Nordic hamstring curl. Those are all programmed in. There's a variety. But the basic foundational movements are your squat, hinge, lunge, push, pull.
Yep.
That's what it is. Vertical, horizontal. That's what they are. So that's what you're going to see. Yes, we choose exercises to do those things, but that's not how we think when we program. We have to go through these movement patterns. We want to make these movement patterns better because they apply to all these other things. Let's pick the right exercises based on a variety of things. Again, whether those are limitations or advantages, depending on how we have, based on the individual. And then if we're delivering, again, to the masses, like, hey, man, we got to pick what generally exists out there, right? Understanding there's pros and cons to all of it. So, yeah, variety versus consistency, and variety in choosing exercises to impact your movement. You can have a lot of fun with that. But to the point of the Joel Seedman thing, at some point,
the crazy hot girl scale goes from hot to crazy.
Yeah,
there's a line there.
There's a line there. You go from the friend zone into the crazy, and then there's a unicorn thing in there somewhere. However that works. So don't get too crazy with your variety and trying to make it fancy or sexy. It doesn't necessarily need to be like that. Sometimes it's cool, but most of the time it's just sticking to the basics.
Yep.